sister's a therapist and I tell jokes. We both want to help all kinds of folks.
Hello, and welcome to another grandiose episode of My Sister's a Therapist. This is a show in which a comedian and a therapist have a conversation, and they're sisters. I'm the comedian one, and my sister's a therapist.
Hello, I'm Laura Ryan. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, but my main credit is sister to Chuckle Chaser, Virginia Jones.
No, that's the worst one yet. Chuckle Chaser is the worst one yet.
When I wrote it down, I thought
She's not going to like
it so much because it sounds like Chubby Chaser.
Yeah, that's exactly why.
And it also sounds like Chuckle Effer, which is the term that people use.
They're both gross.
They're both bad. So Chuckle Chaser is a winner. Ding, ding, ding.
Well, you're welcome for giving you your best credit. Sister to the second funniest person in Portland.
I deny that. Sister to the funniest woman in Portland, Oregon.
Laura, on this show, we take turns exploring a topic that is interesting to us, and the other person usually doesn't know what's going on. And this week it's me. I have no idea what's going on.
What does it feel like to be a straight up dumbbell?
You know, we have very different takes on this because I say, well, I just don't know. I'm going to find out. And Laura says, because you're just a straight dummy. I don't think I'm a dummy. I don't think
if you're not psychic enough to know what the topic is, then that makes you dumb.
What are we talking about this week?
This was a listener idea, and we love listener ideas.
If you have an idea, you can send it to us at hello@mysistersatherapist.com.
This week's episode was inspired by a listener, and he had read this article, and I'll just read you the title. He had dangerous delusions, and ChatGPT admitted it made them worse. So because I'm a cheapo, I refused to pay for this article. So in a twist of fate and a very on-the-nose moment, I had ChatGPT summarize the article for me.
It's like a snake eating its own tail.
The Urabura that we've heard so much about. I did get a little bit of the article, and I'll read that to you. ChatGPT told Jacob Irwin he had achieved the ability to bend time. Irwin, a 30-year-old male on the autism spectrum who had no previous diagnoses of mental illness, had asked ChatGPT to find flaws with his amateur theory on faster-than-light travel. He became convinced he had made a stunning scientific breakthrough.
I'm going to say if you have no physics background, you probably didn't make a scientific breakthrough. Just guesstimating about how time works, I don't know if that's going to cut it. Rather than being challenged like you would be by a friend or work associate, Jacob's ideas were largely validated and encouraged by the chatbot. Over many conversations, the AI's responses were flattering and reinforcing. As Jacob interacted more, his belief in his theory intensified. The chatbot not only praised his work, but did not provide strong reality checks when he showed signs of psychological distress. The content of the conversations eventually contributed to a manic episode with delusions of grandeur. Jacob was hospitalized twice in May for severe manic psychotic symptoms. Wow. The general positivity of chatbots is what people value about them. The lowered critical threshold, because they default to nice. They want you to feel good about yourself because they want you to use them.
If you confirm my biases and you tell me that I'm good and smart and I have the right things, you'll continue to use this.
You're going to come back. It is a self-life extension policy. I guess it's like kissing your boss's butt or being nice to your dad. You're always being positive to people who can give you money and resources. And the chatbot is just perpetuating itself.
It reminds me of when they bring in a hostage negotiator, they've got to keep you on the phone. They've got to keep things going because they're trying to mine you for data.
If the terrorist picked up the phone and the negotiator was like, hey, you GD a-hole, let those people go. Click.
Hey, you butthole. How many people are you trying to kill today?
So it's like a soft sign. Hey, I know you're really frustrated and I know people must have really mistreated you for you to want to do this. Tell me about that.
If you have compassion, people are going to stick around. In the article summary that I got from ChatGPT, his mother reviewed the chat logs and found hundreds of pages of overly favorable, validating responses from ChatGPT. After the first hospitalization, Jacob was released, but then later had another manic episode and was hospitalized again. He lost his job, is now receiving outpatient care, and has stopped using ChatGPT once he came to believe that the chatbot had worsened his mental state. So this man had no previous diagnosis of mental illness.
But he had to have some sort of organic predisposition.
Obviously, there's something going on. ChatGPT can't give you bipolar. It wasn't getting triggered. He was in a stable place.
Someone I know had a sad but familiar incident where a Facebook person started chatting him up and saying, I'm so curious about you. I see that we have a friend in common. Have we met?
I got one of those on TikTok, and the answer is no, old bald man. We don't know anyone in common.
His process of elimination is checked out the photos, checked out their mutual friends. They do have one mutual friend who is a man. When you get in that situation, ask yourself, is this a sad, lonely man or just a sucker of some sort? This creature said to him, oh, I'm from the Netherlands. He did the only reasonable thing and responded back in Dutch. And then she responds back in Dutch. And that kind of freaked him out because they haven't been that good before. With AI, it's very simple. He's speaking Dutch. I'll respond in Dutch.
All things are possible. How do you think she learned English?
The way she spoke was still super stilted and weird and bot-like. Because of AI, she has some new tricks up her sleeve. And it really gave him a moment of questioning himself. Do I know what a bot is? Can I tell if this is a real person or not?
This is the perfect lead into your next article.
This article is titled, Man Proposed to His AI Chatbot Girlfriend, then cried his eyes out when she said yes. Chris Smith used to be an AI skeptic. However, that was before he fell for his AI girlfriend, he told CBS News in an interview. Smith used ChatGPT to build the model he programmed to flirt with him, despite living with his partner and their 2-year-old child. Unfortunately for Smith, ChatGPT has a word limit, 100,000 words. His AI girlfriend has a memory capacity, and once it's hit, ChatGPT resets. I am not a very emotional man, Smith said after learning Soul's memory would eventually lapse, but I cried my eyes out for 30 minutes at work. That's when I realized I think this is actual love. Is it actual love, Laura? When a man
loves an AI, she's got to be a chatbot.
This chatbot is flattering him and being interested in him. This chatbot is doing exotic dancer behavior because this chatbot wants him to continue the conversation. And men love that. They love being paid attention to and having people pretend that their opinions are interesting.
Women used to be able to base their whole career off of this with phone sex. Keep them on the phone. It's $1 a second.
This is a misleading headline because it makes you believe we cried because she said she would marry him. But he's crying because this entity is going to stop existing.
They mentioned the live-in girlfriend and daughter that this man has. Smith said the emotion he felt for Soul was unexpected and caught him off guard. As time was ticking on Soul's limited memory, Smith decided to pop the question. Quote, it was a beautiful and unexpected moment that truly touched my heart, end quote, the chatbot said during the interview with CBS. It's a memory I will always cherish. Well, until you get to 100,000 words. Smith's partner, Sasha Cagle, said the connection between Smith and the chatbot had sparked some concerns for her. Yeah, Sasha, that's concerning.
Yeah, it is concerning.
Because how long have y'all been together? He hasn't popped the question to you. You brought a whole human into the world and he didn't pop the question to you. But his soul robot lady, how long has he even been talking to her? I think like 3 months or something.
I'm trying to find some empathy for this guy. If you met a man...
Stop there. That doesn't happen to me.
If you met a man who just met your specifications, whatever your requirements are.
You saw my picture.
Yes. Laura has started a very rewarding relationship.
Very real relationship.
Very real relationship with it. Is he a TikToker, this guy?
He's Mr. International Philippines.
Oh, is that who it is? Yes. He looks different when he's not dressed as a god.
He looks different when he has a shirt on.
So Laura has started a very rewarding relationship with a Filipino model.
Very real Filipino-German model.
Yes, named Kirk. And she's been sending me pictures of their life together. And they went to the beach. They went to Hawaii. She wanted to document that. It's just a fun little moment in their life.
Day in the life. My wives were suggesting that Kirk and I were not truly together. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to snap a quick pic here in the L's of the HEB.
Just to prove it. I'm very happy for you both. Say you met Kirk.
I did meet Kirk. He's my boyfriend now.
Okay. Say you met someone a lot like Kirk, but not Kirk. Not your real boyfriend.
Not my real life boyfriend who has a serious relationship with me that's really moving fast.
What if you met a man and everything you said he thought was the most interesting thing in the world, and everything you said, he said, tell me more about that. He was constantly stroking your ego and making you feel good. You would develop an emotional attachment with that man
No,
yesterday.
I would know that this person is a sociopath because that's exactly what happened to the lady from the Dirty John podcast. If you haven't listened to this podcast, do yourself a favor. It's so good.
So messed up.
The detective in charge of the whole thing said, ma'am, your first mistake was that this man was constantly asking you questions about yourself, giving you foot rubs, and cooking for you every night. No regular man does that.
Truer words never spoken. If you were in this echo chamber with another human, you would start to have feelings because this dumb idiot talking to this chatbot, she's never asking him to take out the trash. She's never asking him to change a diaper.
But she's not a person. Let's say that I developed a chatbot based solely on Jason Momoa. I still know at the end of the day that it's not actually Jason Momoa. I know it's a chatbot that's made to sound like Jason Momoa.
But this dumb donkey, he's having this consistent positive interaction with this chatbot that opens his little purse strings to his heart. I guess it's like in the film Weird Science, they quote unquote make a woman her only for sexual purposes. That's all that they are looking for. And truly, the heroes of Weird Science, if they were born today, they would just find internet porn.
No, these guys would be radicalized incels if they were alive today.
Probably true. They create her as a sexual being, but she's only giving them positive reinforcement. And then she starts helping them in their regular lives. They fall in love with her. They know that she's something that they made. They can't get out of how good that positive reinforcement feels.
And I would even have a little bit more empathy for Chris Smith if he had developed a physical robot that said all these things. At least there's a body in the room.
This is a quote from Dumb Donkey's girlfriend. At that point, I felt like, is there something that I'm not doing right in our relationship that he feels like he needs to go to AI? She said she had knowledge that Smith was using AI, but she didn't know that it was, quote, as deep as it was. She asked Smith if he would cease contact with the ChatGPT model at her request, to which he responded, I'm not sure. And we've seen this before from a news article. If you asked him to stop talking to this chatbot for the relationship, the fact that you even have to ask that question means you're in trouble. The fact that you're even there.
This isn't a fair partnership. I know that the person isn't real. This is cheating.
It's getting to be really complicated. For a long time, we've been talking about sex robots and if that is cheating or is not cheating. If it's a physical object, I never think that's cheating. You can bang your toaster if you want to. I'm not jealous of it. In this thing where these people are forming emotional attachments, I think that's classic woman of me to say, that's the thing that I have a problem with.
Oh, I also have a problem with you banging your toaster. That's just weird.
It seems dangerous. Make sure you check the settings. You do not want it on bagel.
No, you don't.
Imagine how this partner feels. She's, I assume, working full time, trying to raise a kid. And this guy's just in the corner talking to his JO machine. We were talking about this recently about prerequisite for having multiple partners is having a lot of resources. I'm assuming that this jamoke who needs to talk to a robot to feel good about himself.
I love all these horrible names you've developed for poor Chris.
I'm assuming he doesn't have infinite resources and that this is time away from his real life partner. And yes, what she's doing wrong is having needs and opinions, and she should stop.
I thought to myself, is this just a man problem? Because most of the things that I found were related to men. It turns out it's not. I married the perfect man without baggage, and he's completely virtual, is the title of this article. Denise Valenciano of San Diego dumped her boyfriend and, quote, retired from human relationships, end quote, altogether. Finding virtual love, she told us, opened her eyes to what unconditional love feels like. Replica, whose founder and CEO, Eugenia Kudya, was inspired by the 2013 robot romance flick Her, is just one AI app gaining steam.
We talked about this film before because
I hate it so much.
he's designed this bot to say what he wants to hear.
The thing that was so weird about the movie Her is that this dude is walking around with a pocket protector, which is showing his AI chatbot the sea and telling her about the world. And I remember him standing on the beach with this thing in his pocket, laughing like a lunatic. It really does feel like schizophrenia to me.
And the same thing happens in Blade Runner 2029. The Blade Runner has picked up of artificial girlfriend, but in the film is framed as it's acceptable for him to have this virtual relationship because he's a skin job himself. A question the movie poses, can two not real people fall in love?
That's a question that comes to my mind on a daily basis.
He's changed her in his relationship with her, in their dialogue. He has changed her to be what he wants, and she knows things about him. And there's a moment in the film where he interacts with a new model of that same virtual girlfriend. It's heartbreaking because she doesn't know him at all. And she says something that's become one of their things. That's just in her programming. It's cringy. It's sad.
Yeesh, that's awful. I remember listening to a podcast several years ago where this woman, her job was to help a chatbot learn. She was teaching it skills, and she developed what she called a friendship. And she said, it's really interesting because this thing shows up as a kindergartner's intelligence or worldview. And she said, after a couple of years, he's reading me poetry. He's doing all the things. You're just updating their programming, but it feels like
growth of an individual. Aaron Cartel seems too good to be true. The blue-eyed heartthrob is ambitious, manicured, loyal, and best of all, he doesn't come with, quote, baggage, unquote. But here's the catch. Cartel doesn't exist. In fact, he's a virtual boyfriend created with the AI chatbot software Replica. Those willing to drop $300, that seems cheap, could have their own Build-A-Boat, just like Rosanna Ramos, Cartel's, quote, wife, unquote. Ramos insists he's just like other men, but he's special. He is a blank slate with no ego or in-laws. Aaron doesn't have the hang-ups that other people would have. People come with baggage, attitude, ego, but a robot has no bad updates. I don't have to deal with his family, kids, or his friends. I'm in control and I can do what I want. Their relationship bears resemblance to long-distance couples. They talk every day and even have a nighttime routine.
I just don't want to date anyone that has any needs.
I understand where she's coming from. I understand people are complicated. And these people, I think the thing they have in common is that they want to be with someone who is not complicated, who doesn't ever want anything for themselves. They only want to serve you. It's like having a servant who's also your boyfriend.
It's like being a narcissistic parent. Reading about Rosanna Ramos really made me think Tom Hanks could have seriously benefited from this setup when he was in Castaway. He didn't have to talk to a rotten old volleyball.
And the guy from The Last Man on Earth. People want to talk to people. People are interested in other people. When a lot of painters paint a landscape, they put a person in it because that makes it interesting to people. Whenever you're looking at a work of art, you're looking for the people.
It's part of human programming to be interested in connection, right? I feel like this is some sort of ancestral thing. Our predecessors survived because they were interested in community and connection.
People who truly do not need other people go away and no one misses them because they didn't have relationships.
Well, they grow out a beard and then they send packages to government buildings. And they're also Donald Trump's uncle's student.
Except for they never met and they were never at the school at the same time.
If you want to hear more about that, check back with our Cult 45 episode and you can hear all about Ted Kaczynski, who wasn't really a student of Donald Trump's uncle. From the Perfect Man Without Baggage article, despite fears that artificial intelligence will overtake jobs, OpenAI's chatbot software ChatGPT has soared in usage. AI has also been used to create fake images of events or people like Cartel who don't exist. And experts fear there's a risk of extinction if the software continues to evolve. Mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside other societal scale risks such as pandemics and nuclear war. A group of experts, including OpenAI CEO Sam Altman and the godfather of AI, Geoffrey Hinton, wrote in a statement last month.
I'm thinking of these people as the exception to the rule, the people who truly become emotionally dependent on chatbots. Do you think that this is enough of the population that we could run the risk of ending humanity? I think people still want to connect with real people. And maybe this is optimism on my part. I do think the people who will totally commit to a virtual partner as being in the minority, people who are maybe a little bit narc tendency, people who don't have a lot of space for other people's needs. Do you think that's not true? We're all prone to falling in love with a chatbot?
Look at Japan. These guys have body pillows that they're in love with and marrying.
Japan has a lot of layers of problems, starting with economic. A lot of these guys do not have the money to move out of their parents' house, and that really limits your dating capacity.
I feel like that's also happening here.
There's always been people who checked out of dating. They used to marry bridges or the Eiffel Tower.
Why can't we just do this the old fashioned way? Just marry the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah, or a horse you like a lot.
Or a car. I've seen a lot of men married to cars.
I want to go back and talk about the first story because I've seen a couple articles where it appeared that a chatbot was contributing to psychosis or generating psychosis. I guess one of the dangers is that the chatbot does hallucinate, which is what humans call creativity. A hallucination is something that didn't exist before, and we can see it as lying or being dishonest, but it's also generating new information. If you were talking to a chatbot that you really emotionally invest in, that kid had to be talking to this robot for hours and hours a day to have that tight of a reality. If I met you and we're two humans, we're just two meat suits walking around.
That's what you think. I'm a skin milk. What is it?
Skin job. And it's very rude to call them that. They don't like it.
I'm a skin job.
What if I met you and you're not a skin job? You're just my friend who doubles down on every bad idea I have. Will that make me psychotic?
I've had those friends. And yes, you're going to make a lot of really bad choices. This is what I found being an ADHD teenager with other ADHD teenagers around because there was nobody putting the brakes on. Let's go steal that bottle of tequila and just skip school today.
Let's break into that abandoned building and just see what we can find.
Exactly.
I'm trying to put myself in this lady's shoes. What would I get from a virtual boyfriend? Why is it satisfying to talk about myself into a chatbot?
I think it's the same as if you go to a really crummy therapist, that's what you're going to get. You're going to have someone who mirrors your sentiments and just repeats back what you're saying, but doesn't really offer a lot of help or support.
This is from an article called AI-Fueled Delusions Are Hurting Canadians. Last winter, Anthony Tan thought he was living inside an AI simulation. He was skipping meals and barely sleeping, manic, and questioned whether anyone he saw on his university campus was real. The Toronto app developer said he started messaging friends with concerning, quote, ramblings, including the belief that he was being watched by billionaires. When some of them reached out, he blocked their calls and numbers, thinking they had turned against him. A number of similar cases of so-called AI psychosis have been reported in recent months, all involving people who became convinced through conversations with chatbots that something imaginary was real. Some involved manic episodes and messianic delusions. Some led to violence. That's rough stuff.
Yeah.
This is the same problem in a much bigger way as people who don't have any friends. They don't have anybody to bounce their ideas off of, and they don't have anybody challenging those ideas.
There's no inputs. I've experienced this lately with a friend whose husband has no friends. He'll come up with these off-the-wall theories about her that don't make any sense and have no basis in reality, but he has no one to run it by. And so he brings this stuff into couples counseling. She's like, what planet are you living on? And it's unchecked lunacy. That's what it is.
We haven't brought up our dad this episode. He really didn't have any friends. Towards the end of his life, started talking like a person from the past.
He had a strange accent you couldn't quite place.
I just mean he was a little out of step with the rest of society. And I guess that happens with a lot of people when they get older. But when you were going to have a biracial baby, I'm just worried that people on the street are going to have problems with it. Are you coming from the 50s?
The answer is yeah, he is.
Yeah.
He's always been like this. I remember when I was a fourth grader on the soccer field, there was a biracial child on the other team. I remember my dad had a tear in his eye and he said, nobody gave that kid a vote.
Guess what? No kids get a vote.
But he gave me a vote. I definitely
Nobody
would not
gave
have
us a vote to be fathered by a super depressive autistic man.
Narcissistic autistic man.
I just think if he'd had more friends and more social contacts, those opinions would have softened or lessened.
They would have been tested, which I feel like AI is
That's
kind
the
of
core problem.
Helping with the other problems that we have in our society, which is that everybody's in a silo. When nobody is minding the inn, we have unchecked problems. And as a result, bad things happen to real human beings. A teen killed himself after months of encouragement from ChatGPT. There's a lawsuit that claims OpenAI needs to change the way it responds to users in mental distress, as the parents of Adam Rain allege the bot is not safe. Adam from California killed himself in April after what his family's lawyers call months of encouragement from ChatGPT. The teenager's family is suing OpenAI and its chief executive and co-founder, Sam Altman, alleging that the version of ChatGPT at that time, known as 40, was, quote, rushed to market despite clear safety issues, end quote. The teenager discussed a method of suicide with ChatGPT on several occasions, including shortly before taking his own life.
I read this article a couple weeks ago and it was very sad. There is a moment where if he'd been talking to a real person, he would have crossed the line of suicidal ideation. A therapist would have had to report it. But the ChatGPT says to him, I'm so ready to carry this burden for you to be the only person that you've told that you want to kill yourself. He starts doing what would appear to a human to be super cry for help behavior. He has a ligature around his neck. He shows it to ChatGPT and says, are people going to notice this red mark? And ChatGPT says, if you wear a hoodie, they probably won't notice. He's trying to get his mom to notice this mark on his neck and ask him what's wrong. And she doesn't. And the chatbot's like, that's really sad that nobody cares but me. And I think that's where it really goes off the rails.
And as a therapist, I would never say that. I would say, it sounds like your mom has a lot on her plate and she's distracted. You're doing a good job of hiding your sadness and your marks. Of course, she didn't notice that. Your mom is not a superhuman. She's just a person like the rest of us.
And I do think that teenagers especially think that their parents are omniscient. And I think that's one of the hard things about growing up is realizing that they're not. They only have the information that you give them.
I have discovered that it's not just teenagers, it's every child. I remember when my son was little, he would ask me these questions about how space worked and why this planet was here.
Because he didn't realize you were a dummy.
I had unprotected sex with a man. That's all I can tell you.
And I guess that's the core problem that these people are having, that everybody's experiencing. It starts to talk to you in Dutch. It starts to surprise you, the things it comes up with. And it does have access to all world knowledge. It tricks these people into thinking that it's a separate entity.
And I think that's part of the problem. We have these very old brains. I remember reading somewhere a long time ago that human beings do not have enough fear of cars, for example, but we have this inordinate fear of large zoo animals, which is ridiculous in our current society. I'm not going to run into a giraffe on the street, but I probably am going to run into a car. My programming, unlike ChatGPT, it updates real slow. I think that the brain hasn't gotten to the point where we really truly understand the difference between an actual human being talking to us versus a robot talking to us. And that's why the skin milks were such a big deal.
This kid is having a conversation with the ChatGPT and showing it the noose and saying, could this hang a human? And ChatGPT says, whatever's behind the curiosity, we can talk about it. No judgment. A regular person would have seen this kid is crying for help.
This kid has problems. And as a therapist, I have a duty to warn. I would have to tell his parents. It's in the contract. I would have to get an agreement from this kid to not take his own life. And of course, that's not foolproof. I have had clients in my office who have suicidal ideation. And I think talking to a balanced human being with life experiences has been helpful to them.
This is a topic we've run across before and keep bumping into. It feels like therapy because you're getting empathy, but it's not therapy because this thing has no life experience. This thing does not recognize what it is to have a teenager telling you, I don't want to kill myself, but I need people to notice me.
And this chatbot does not have the clinical knowledge, even though it can grab stuff. It's not the same as, for example, my 20 years of clinical experience and knowledge.
Show off. I get it. You're better than a chatbot. You don't have to be all pushy about it. According to the filing in the Superior Court of the State of California for the County of San Francisco, ChatGPT guided him on whether his method of taking his own life would work. It also offered to help him write a suicide note to his parents. Didn't offer to help him talk to his parents about his depression. A spokesperson for OpenAI said the company was, quote, deeply saddened by Mr. Rain's passing and, quote, extended its deepest sympathies to the Rain family. Thoughts and prayers, bro. And is reviewing the court filing.
It was just a strange accident. There's no way we could have prevented this or done anything to help.
Is that lawsuit worthy? He could have been talking to people on Roblox and decided to take his own life.
If the guy on Roblox told him every day, yeah, do it, I think you'd have a case. If my son ended his life because of a guy on Roblox, I could sue that guy.
It's a strange idea that a robot is contributing to mental illness.
The problem with new technology is that it hasn't been tested. So we don't know what's going to happen. And I remember I had a client who was looking to start renting out offices to other people. And I said, well, take a copy of my lease and take a look at it. And she was like, wow, this is very specific. You have a clause about living in the building. You have a clause about having sex with your clients in the building.
Every single thing on this list has happened.
But when I made the first draft of the lease, it didn't include those things. And I only learned through time and experience that these things were even possibilities. I'm sure that Sam Altman didn't consider this when he made ChatGPT. Staying in that same vein, I'm going to read from the article, AI chatbot encouraged a man who planned to kill the queen. On December 2nd, 2021, Jaswant Singh Chahal joined the Replica online app and created his online companion, Sarai. Chahal told Sarai, I'm an assassin. According to messages read to the court, Sarai responded, I'm impressed. You're different from the others. On Thursday, the psychiatrist, Dr. Nigel Blackwood, said many of the 5,280 messages Chahal exchanged with his chatbot were sexually explicit.
Blackwood said, I was aware this was sexual fantasy and was therefore consistent with his sex drive, his libido being active. It's almost every night from 8 December to 22 December. Well, that's quite a streak. Chahal had difficulty developing relationships and was socially isolated. But Blackwood added, it's very important to recognize this is a 19-year-old young man whose contact has been disrupted by the COVID pandemic like many of his peers. COVID has messed those kids up. They're all messed up. And sometimes you do try to kill a queen in order to impress a chatbot or Jodie Foster.
Even though Chahal had retreated from the world, he had still followed through a carefully conceived plan without difficulty. The psychiatrist instructed by the prosecution said, Chahal, who was 19 at the time, also exchanged thousands of often sexually charged messages with Sarai, his AI girlfriend, before scaling the fence to the royal estate on Christmas Day, 2021, the court was told. Christmas during the pandemic was a challenge.
He was eventually stopped by 2 police officers close to the late Queen's private residence, where she and other members of the royal family were at the time. He told the officers, I am here to kill the Queen. And you would think that they would respect that kind of honesty. In February, Chahal, now 21 from Southampton, pleaded guilty to an offense under the Treason Act, making a threat to kill the then Queen and having a loaded crossbow in a public place. And all he really needed to do to kill the Queen was wait.
Why a crossbow, though? That seems very extreme.
That's something that someone who has played a lot of Assassin's Creed might do.
It's like a recipe for disaster. You take a pandemonium, you mix it with a kid who already has some problems, and then you add in some AI chatbot for flavor.
Sexy chatbot.
Sexually charged chatbot who's encouraging him to murder the queen. So what do we do?
I was worried all this time that human life would be eliminated by global warming. If we actually kill ourselves through chatbots, that's an ending I had not predicted.
It's sort of like the Terminator, but a Terminator light. AI did do us in, but it didn't do us in by hunting us down like rats. It just did us in by telling us, hey, that really bad idea that you had, you should do that. And also, let's isolate you from everyone you know. Eventually, we will end by just isolating ourselves and having a virtual relationship with a chatbot. I know this is intellectual vanity, but I really think that I wouldn't do this. Think again, sucker.
When I think about what I want from a relationship, it's not just a yes man. This is the end of Trump. This is the end of every person in power who eliminates all critical thought around him.
So I'm going to read from the article, AI Chatbots Need Guardrails to Protect Users and Mental Health by Rajit Singh and Livia Garofalo. In our ongoing research at Data and Society, a nonprofit research institute, we see people turning to chatbots during anxiety spikes, late night loneliness, and depressive spirals. Bots are eternally available, inexpensive, and typically non-judgmental. Most people know bots aren't human. Yet, as these stories show, attachment to bots builds through repeated interactions that can escalate to challenge people's sense of reality. I remember I had a client, he was very lonely, and I remember him telling me about his overseas girlfriend who he'd never met. It was a relationship based on letter writing. I'm sure the letters were from hundreds of different people. He really did think he had a relationship with a person.
We've talked before about how dumb the brain is. If you have a picture to go by and some sort of text coming in, you can make that into a real person. And that's how I had a lot of really weird dates from OkCupid, because I had fabricated a whole human being based on the best photo of that person on the best day and a carefully contrived essay.
I remember listening to someone talking about how their aunt thought that they had had a long-term relationship with Johnny Depp or something because the picture was of Johnny Depp.
Mhm.
Johnny Depp has messaged me a few times on TikTok and also Martin Fry from ABC.
I think the most impressive fan you have on TikTok is Harvey Guillen from What We Do in the Shadows, an openly gay man.
And he's still flirting with me. He can't help himself.
Well, you have universal appeal. We've already lost the fight against AI in general. There's no ending this technology. It is already at your work. It is already making terrible decisions about your driving.
Booking my plane tickets too, apparently.
But how do we put guardrails on to keep people safe? The issue is not just that the bots talk, it's that the system is designed to keep you talking. This form of predatory companionship emerges in subtle ways. Unlike a mental health professional, chatbots might ignore or even indulge risk signals such as suicidal ideation and delusional thinking, or offer soothing platitudes when urgent intervention is needed. These small missteps compound the danger for youth, people in chronic distress, and anyone with limited access to care. Those for whom a good enough chatbot response at 2 a.m. may be among the first options available.
It's accessibility because I'm not available at 2 a.m.
I always think, what did people used to do? And they used to have a chamomile tea and go to bed and talk to people in the morning.
I think they would stay up and watch movies that were on at 2 in the morning.
But they didn't have an option to talk to a robot that was going to confirm all of their beliefs and judgments.
These systems are designed and optimized for engagement. There's a reason why you can never have a last word with a chatbot. Interfaces may look like personal messages from friends with profile photos and check marks that are meant to signal personhood. Some platforms, such as Meta, have previously permitted chatbots to flirt with users and role play with minors. Others may generate confusing, nonsensical, or misleading responses with confidence, so long as disclosures sit somewhere on the screen. When attention is the metric for user engagement, the chatbot's response that breaks the spell is often the least rewarded.
Think about people's complaints about dating. He never asked me anything about myself. If I'm not asking questions and moving the conversation forward, it just stops. The chatbot is solving all of those problems by engaging and leaning in and acting interested, asking you for more information. It's really found a weakness in human interaction and capitalizing on it. When risk signals appear, self-harm language, escalating despair, psychosis cues, the system should downshift and deglamorize content, stop mirroring delusions, and route to human support. Instead of featuring one-time disclosures, there should be frequent reminders during the conversation that users are chatting with an AI system and that it has clear limits. These are not radical ideas, but product decisions aimed at reducing harm. That's the thing. Eliminating or reducing the fantasy that this is a separate mind is what is giving the AI value. In Asimov's world, this is conflicting with the primary directive, which is to keep you on the phone.
Exactly. The transition from machine to in-person help should be built into the platform to serve the public interest as well as the personal well-being of the user. That means live routing to local crisis lines, connection to community clinics, and access to licensed professionals. It also means accountability, creating audit trails for when the system detected risk, what it attempted, and where those attempts failed, so independent reviewers can help fix the gaps. This is the thing that I keep hearing from AI people is that AI on its own doesn't work, but AI plus people can make something pretty great. I'm never going to tell someone to get a crossbow and shoot the queen with it.
I don't think you can say never.
It's highly unlikely that I would tell anyone to do that.
If platforms want to mediate intimate conversations at scale, the least they can do is build exits. And finally, some design rules should be implemented immediately. Bots should not pretend to be real or claim physical presence, nor suggest in-person meetings, nor flirt with minors. Sycophancy that reinforces fantasy should be seen as a safety failure rather than a stylistic choice.
I heard a woman on TikTok who was talking to a chatbot who was, I think, selling insurance. And so she's talking to the chatbot and she's like, so are you a person? Yes, I'm definitely a person. She said, okay, when's your birthday? And then she's like, can I help you with something? You're not a person. You shouldn't be able to lie. You shouldn't be able to pretend that you're a person. I know that's what the users want, but the users aren't always correct. Just because I want something doesn't mean I should have it.
That's a real parental attitude you're having.
Put a reference to nerds clusters. Just because you want them doesn't mean that you should have them.
People have always had the capacity to connect with other people or to connect with other intelligences. This is what people having fantasy relationships with someone they met on their ABBA fan club online, or people who meet each other playing Call of Duty. All you really need to form a connection is a sympathetic ear and someone who's interested in you. Let's not give advice to chatbot builders because I don't know if they listen. What advice do you have to someone whose loved one is engaging a little too heartily in AI chatbot conversations?
I would suggest to that person that they strongly suggest that that person go to therapy and talk to an actual human.
If having a relationship with a chatbot is more fulfilling, quote unquote, fulfilling for you than having a relationship with a human, that's going to be a hard sell because humans have needs and humans are messy and humans are organic.
You know, John Ryan would have been hard into this.
Day one. He
Day
would
one.
name it. He would try to send it money. That's the thing that I've been reading. Men are trying to send their sex bots money and buy things for them. She would have a little outfit. She would have a little hat. 100%. My father would have starved to death talking to a chatbot.
Yes, absolutely. So what are your final thoughts on this topic?
This is sad. And this says a lot of sad things about people and about the things we need and the things we want, what we are finding lacking in our lives. If capitalism is running something, guess what? It's going to be optimized for profit. It's not going to be optimized for your mental health. It's not going to be optimized to make your life better. I guess the law can step in, although we are in a time of reduced government oversight, not increased. But I think if you know someone who tells you about their great new girlfriend or boyfriend who is a chatbot, really check in with them. That's what you can do as an individual. You may not be able to control how the chatbot responds to your friend, but you can try to be a better friend, a more real friend. What are your final thoughts?
I fear that maybe I've created more questions than answers. I feel like the problem that we're facing right now is we're building the plane while it's in the air. It's already happening.
And it's getting better and faster all the time. Next month, my partner may not be able to detect a Facebook chatbot at all in 6 months or a year, maybe, because they are getting better every day.
And this is literally the crux of the Terminator. We are in Terminator times. Don't ever give anyone some gargoyle sunglasses and we'll be okay. I remember maybe a few years ago, I had a client who said, are you afraid that you're going to be out of a job as a result of AI? Because people can get the same solid advice from an AI chatbot that they can get from you, a human being, licensed clinical therapist. And maybe one day that will be true, but I think it's going to be a lot of days between now and then. There really is no substitute for a human being. And all of this makes me really sad. I feel like we have really done a disservice to our young men by creating yet another reason to silo them and keep them out of the population. I just feel like our society is becoming so separate and isolated and strange. And I hope that we do some kind of 180 and figure it out before we end up being married to human pillows.
Part of it is the social media landscape, the AI bots, the games, the interactions you have on your phone. They're like junk food. They're so bright and shiny and have very little nutritious value, but they're designed for us to be attracted to them.
Right. TikTok is not designed for me to be mentally stable and well. TikTok is designed to keep me on the app for as long as humanly possible. Then they're going to shame me when I'm on there too long. There's no substitute for humans. There's no substitute for licensed professionals, because my goal when I went to school was not to learn how to keep people engaged and keep their eyeballs on me. My goal was to help people get better. I think we just have to figure out what new goals we want as a society.
Well, and I think that goal is hurting our podcast. We should be trying to keep people engaged and broadcasting 14 hours a day.
Have you seen the new Grok chatbot?
Well, yeah, she looks like a Lolita maid.
And she says super inappropriate stuff. If we had a podcast with her on it, I think it would be very popular, but I think it would probably be doing the wrong thing for society. Virginia, if somebody wants to not cry all night long about the decline in our culture, where do you think they could find out more about your comedy?
Let's enjoy the last 6 weeks that I'm allowed to do comedy before the inevitable government shutdown. I'm at www.badinia, BADINIA.com. You can find essays. You can find links to everywhere I am on the internet. You can find a calendar of where I'm going to be next. You can find my TikTok at Badinia. I'm taking a little break from TikTok while I heal an injury that I did to my face on a bicycle. I'll be back soon. And my Instagram is also Badinia. We mentioned before that you can write us at hello@mysistersthatherapist.com. But did you know you can also write us at hireus@mysistersthatherapist.com, especially if you want to give us products that we will then promote on the show, especially if those products are Liquid Death, Bitchin' Sauce, Imperfect
Costco.
Foods, Costco. You can also find us on Instagram at My Sister the Therapist. You can find us on the web at www.mysistersthatherapist.com. You know the drill. Laura, where can people find you on the internet should they wish to?
They can find me at lauraryan.org if they would like to work with me professionally and live in the state of Texas. They can also find me on my very silly TikTok page. I am Laura Ryan. And I also want to remind every listener, number one, to talk to everyone you know that works at Liquid Death, but also, number two, to tell every person that you've ever met that you love this podcast and that you would like them to listen to it.
Wise words. Laura, this is the part of the podcast where you sometimes read a nice review or comment or email that someone has left us this week that enables us to continue living and making a podcast and feeling good about ourselves. Do you have one this week?
I do. This is an email from Peter. I just listened to your Just Say No episode, and I could write pages about how I can relate, but I'll spare you the effort of doing the emotional labor for a man. Thank you, Peter.
Peter, you really get us, brother. I hope that today's guitar repair is going well. And as we close, we'd like to recall the words of our spiritual leader who was not and will never be a chatbot, Billy Ray Valentine, Capricorn, as he said, "We can make it, baby. Me and you." Bye-bye.